The Puck Portfolio with Andy MacNeil.
Hey, welcome to the Puck Portfolio presented by NorthStar Bets. I'm your host, Andy MacNeil. In this episode, I'll be breaking down the 4 Western Conference matchups in the first round of the 2024 NHL playoffs, sharing my series predictions, probabilities, and best bets. I've already done my Eastern Conference predictions for the first round, and you can check out that video via the link in the description below. Make sure you drop a like on the video and subscribe to the Canada Sports Betting YouTube channel. Anyway, let's get into it. First up, we've got a rematch from last year's playoffs. The Dallas Stars, their reward for winning the Western Conference is drawing the Vegas Golden Knights in round 1, the defending Stanley Cup champions. Of course, Vegas beat Dallas 4-2 in the Western Conference Finals last year before going on to win its first Stanley Cup in franchise history. Vegas took a 3-0 lead in that series. Dallas was able to force a Game 6. They won 2 straight games, but they lost 6-0 on home ice in Game 6, a crushing defeat. The Stars and Golden Knights played 3 times this season. Vegas won all 3 meetings. However, the first 2 meetings required overtime, and that has been a theme in this matchup as 7 out of the last 12 meetings, including playoffs, have extended past 60 minutes. This series also marks the second time that Vegas is going to face their former coach in the postseason. Pete DeBoer served as the Vegas Golden Knights head coach for 3 years before being hired by the Dallas Stars ahead of last season. DeBoer led Vegas to the conference finals in consecutive seasons, losing to Dallas in 2019-20 before the Golden Knights missed the playoffs in 21-22. So how do they match up? Well, the Stars have an edge in goal. Jake Ottinger improved a lot down the stretch. He was great in the last month after struggling to start the season, but the Golden Knights have a decent tandem with Aiden Hill and Logan Thompson, both having pretty good seasons. So the margins could be pretty thin in this series. I think Dallas is the better team, ranking among the top 5 in expected goals, goals and shot attempts. They are also one of the best defensive teams in the league, ranking first in expected goals against per evolving hockey. The problem, though, is that Vegas has had a pretty decent season despite leading the league in man games lost due to injury and illness, and they're about to get Captain Mark Stone back in the lineup. I know people aren't going to be happy about that. The Stars absolutely deserve to be a favorite here, but I think sportsbooks have done a pretty good job listing Dallas as a minus 130 series favorite. My forecast has the Stars winning the series roughly 57% of the time, which is in line with the market. I like the Stars as a cup contender. In fact, I've been holding futures on this team all season long, but you'd really have to like them to pay minus 130 on them to win this series, especially given who the opponent is. Vegas is going to be a much tougher out than Los Angeles would have been. All right, moving on to the other matchup in the Central Division. And this one I actually do have some interest in from a betting perspective. It's the Winnipeg Jets and the Colorado Avalanche. Winnipeg beat Colorado in all 3 of their games this season by scores of 4-2, 6-2, and 7-0 in the most recent matchup on April 13th. They swept the season series. Just one of the many surprises the Jets had in store for us. Many of us predicted that Winnipeg was going to be a fringe playoff team after trading Pierre-Luc Dubois and Blake Wheeler, but Gabe Vilardi and Alex Iafallo ended up being great additions, as was Sean Monahan later in the season. For Winnipeg, they have to take advantage of the clear edge that they have in goal with Connor Hellebuck between the pipes. Hellebuck won the William M. Jennings Trophy, awarded to goalies for the team with the fewest goals against during the regular season, and he's the favorite to win the Vezina Trophy. The Avalanche do not have a goaltender that can match him save for save. Colorado's the top offensive team this season, but they've been among the bottom 10 teams over the last 6 weeks of the regular season on defense, and their underlying defensive metrics aren't as strong as they were in past seasons. In fact, Colorado finished 3rd in expected goals against per 60 minutes at even strength in 22-23, but they dropped to 13th this season, so there has been a drop-off in their defensive play. For my money, this is a pretty evenly matched series. The Avalanche grade out as a slightly better team overall, but the Jets, they have home ice, and that's enough to give them about a 49% chance of winning this series, which converts to plus 102 odds. So I think Winnipeg is a good bet at plus +15, but that's as far as I'd go with the Jets, unless you can find a market that's off. The series props, like exact series length and etc., are lining up pretty closely with what I have here in my forecast. So I'm just going to keep it simple, and I'm going to take the Jets to win the series at +115 odds. And next, we have a matchup between the Pacific Division winning Canucks and the Central Division's Nashville Predators, who finished in the first wildcard spot. The Predators have not won a playoff series since the 2017-18 season when they defeated the Colorado Avalanche in the first round. And this series will be the first real playoff appearance for the Vancouver Canucks since 2015, outside of the COVID-affected 2019-20 season. Of course, the Canucks won a couple of rounds inside the bubble. Vancouver was near the top of the league all season long, while the Predators needed a second half surge in order to secure a postseason berth. Back on February 15th, the Predators got spanked 9-2 by the Stars and sat outside of the playoffs. That prompted the team to cancel a planned trip to see U2 at the Sphere in Las Vegas. And after that, we all know what happened. Nashville went on a 16-0-2 run. Look, Vancouver has more star power throughout their lineup with the likes of Elias Pettersson, JT Miller, Quinn Hughes, really too many to list. But I don't think we should be discounting the Predators' scoring prowess here. Nashville's top line has been really dominant this season. Philip Forsberg, Ryan O'Reilly, and Gustav Nyquist have been dominant. Like I said, Forsberg finished the season with 48 goals, good for sixth in the NHL. O'Reilly, he turned the clock back with 69 points. And Nyquist finished with a career high 75 points. Not bad for the 34-year-old. Roman Josi also finished third in scoring among defensemen. So while the Canucks have the likely Norris Trophy winner in Quinn Hughes, the Preds, they have a great defenseman of their own in Roman Josi. And only one team, the Toronto Maple Leafs, scored more goals per 60 minutes than Nashville did in the last 2 months of the regular season. So they're definitely dangerous, not a team to be taken lightly. Vancouver and Nashville finished 6th and 10th, respectively, in goals per 60 minutes this season, but the Canucks ranked among the top 5 in expected goals against per 60 minutes, according to Evolving Hockey. And although the Predators might have looked like a better defensive team down the stretch, ranking 5th in goals against per 60 minutes over the last 2 months of the regular season, the Canucks ranked about 15th during that stretch, but Vancouver was without their top goaltender, Thatcher Demko, for a long stretch, and you have to take that into account. Of course, Demko is back between the pipes for the Canucks, and the Canucks swept the Predators in the 3-game season series. But all 3 of those games did take place in the first half of the season before Nashville really came alive. So Vancouver is a good team, borderline great. I like Nashville's aggressiveness, though. Only the Hurricanes generated more shot attempts per 60 minutes over the last couple of months. And although UC Saros struggled in goal for the Predators early in the season, he's been one of the most consistent goaltenders throughout his NHL career, and he performed pretty well to close out the season. So my model does expect Vancouver to win this series, but only around 56.4% of the time, which means I think their series odds should be about -130, which is about the opposite of where sportsbooks are pricing the Predators at +130. So sportsbooks listing the Canucks as a -150 series favorite, as do other models. Seeing some other prognosticators out there saying that the Canucks should win this one about 60% of the time. I'm a little bit lower than that. I guess I like the Predators a little bit more, or maybe I'm a little bit lower on the Canucks. I just don't think there is any value in betting on Nashville at the current +130 odds. So tough price. And lastly, the Edmonton Oilers, they've got to be feeling good about the fact that they avoided the Vegas Golden Knights for at least one round and will instead play the Los Angeles Kings in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs for the 3rd straight season. The Oilers eliminated the Kings in 6 games last season, 7 games in 2022. LA actually had a chance to push the Oilers to the brink in last year's series. They held a 3-0 lead in game 4 in the first period and had a chance to take a 3-1 series lead, but they blew it and lost in overtime. The Oilers took the next 2 games and eliminated the Kings for the 2nd consecutive season. Los Angeles obviously doesn't have anybody like Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl or Zach Hyman for that matter, but the Kings do have some things that the Oilers do not have, like the defensive specialists Anze Kopitar and Philip Deneau. Not to mention a pretty balanced forward lineup. I mean, they've got Pierre-Luc Dubois and Quentin Byfield playing on the fourth line right now, if you want to call it that. Edmonton's expected goal differential and actual goal differential are much better than the Kings. And Stuart Skinner is the best goaltender in this series. But I wouldn't be surprised to see the Kings frustrate the Oilers and maybe turn this series on its head because they're pretty good defensively. However, according to my model, Edmonton has about a 64% chance of winning the series, which converts to minus 180 series odds. That's about 10 cents shorter than where sportsbooks have the series price. Maybe that's a Connor McDavid tax. I don't know. Let's bring in Nick Merton from the Action Network's Line Change podcast to have him break down his thoughts on this Pacific Division matchup. Nick, how you doing? How are you handicapping this series between the Oilers and Kings?
I'm doing good. I feel like this is like Christmas for hockey fans when you get to, the first round of the playoffs. Is the best time of year. So, and I think this series is going to be really good. And, right off the top, I like the Kings right to plus 140 in game one for half a unit. I think that LA has the avenues to make this into a tough series. And the thing that I kind of like about betting them early, I mean, not just that they've started these series pretty well the last 2 years, anyways, is that, like you said, Skinner is the best goalie in theory, but he hasn't been the best goalie recently. And there's kind of a guessing game with what the Kings will get out of their goaltenders, but they both have actually performed comparably to him. So I do think that if they get that, it gives them an avenue as an underdog. And then the other thing that I think the Oilers should be a little bit afraid of, in my opinion, this Kings roster has completely underperformed what it should be at its peak potential. I really believe that. I really think when Mikey Anderson's on his game, playing at his top level, which he's been in and out of the lineup, hasn't played his best hockey when he's been there. They're a much better team. The blue line looks really good. And then I think that it'll be interesting to see how the Kings balance the lines because I think their recent usage has been pretty idiotic. I really don't agree with putting Fiala with Lizotte. I think that's a really stupid way to use your most dynamic piece. But the other thing is I think that they can make some compositions that are a lot more effective. And I think people are kind of underselling all of the talent that is on the roster. Having Victor Arvidsson back helps a lot. So like you said, they don't have that. Like obviously, no one really has McDavid and Draisaitl, but I think they have more offensive punch than they've shown. And I continue to think that overall, the last few months has been kind of underselling what could all go right for this roster. I think if they click to their top potential, so there's enough question marks, but I definitely want to see how it goes. And I think we're getting the right number at plus 140 to give it a shot in game one. It feels like I don't think they've entirely proven that they're not a cup contender. Like if you think about what everybody thought about this team right around December, and I know it's been a long sample game since then, but everyone was crowning them as like this really well constructed, can't miss team. I don't think they've been that far away from that you can't think maybe they round into top form here with some of those guys back in the mix. So I think the Kings give the Oilers an honest scare. I like the Oilers too. We've been on the outrights together all year. So it's not like a knock on Edmonton. I just think people are kind of sleeping on this as being like the softest possible matchup, which maybe it is. The West is pretty stacked, but I still think that this is actually a pretty formidable Kings side.
All right, so the Kings are the only team that you're actually targeting in the Western Conference, but there are some players that you're looking at for a possible Conn Smythe Trophy winner.
Yeah, there's a few I like. So Dallas, I don't see much game by game value as of now. I think there's a bit of a guessing game with what they're going to get out of the Knights, who are obviously pretty stacked with Stone coming back to the mix. I think it's hard to know exactly what to expect out of that. So not overly pumped with all our stars positions, but the one that I still think holds some value, I like Rope Hintz to win the Conn Smythe from that team. They have a lot of guys in the mix, and I'm fully aware of that. But I do think that when the games get tough and people really pay attention to the way these series go, I don't think it's going to be Robertson. I think everyone's going to notice what Hintz does down the middle. I gave him out last year. In those 3 rounds, he was leading the team. He would have been the guy if they had done it. I want to go back to that. I still think he's by far their most dynamic forward, and he's so useful in all areas of the ice. So I like him at 35-1. And then I also don't mind double dipping and grabbing Heiskanen at 65-1. I think he's the other guy there. I know there's something to be said for Ettinger as well, but I do think that it's more likely it's kind of just Heiskanen or Hintz and the way that Dallas controls play that is getting noticed rather than Ettinger needing to steal games. So I think that's a fun way to sprinkle on a team that I think is very deservedly a cup favorite. So I like the Stars, and I think those two are still worth some action. And then the other one I think everyone's kind of looking at it this way, but if you like the Jets, and I'm less high on this as like a personal bet, but I think if you like the Jets, you just take the Hellebuck 35-1 and live with it. I think it's really like more than probably any other team. That's the most highly correlated one, I think. In round one, he's going to need to be the clear difference if they get by Colorado. So I like that. And then the other one that's kind of, I think, more from a same vein than people realize, I don't mind Demko at 55-1, I think is interesting. And same kind of thing in terms of their chance versus Preds. I think the market's got it about accurately. I think the Preds can give them an honest scare just because the Preds are actually good. But I feel pretty confident it'll be Demko the way that they've actually played games down the stretch and the way they're going to need to win versus other good teams over Quinn Hughes. I know JT Miller's going to be in the mix too, but I really feel like it's a pretty good spot to sprinkle on Demko. So I think that's a fun way to get kind of a leg in on some of these other teams when I think at this point, I don't really see much value really with many of the outrights. It's too tough. There's like 12 really, really good teams in the mix, right? So I think those are still good. I like those. I think that's going to give you a good honest sweat if you, get some of those through those tough first round series. I don't know about you, but to me, it felt like a bit of a guessing game. I think there's better spots to lay some of the juice that we're seeing. And the West in particular, I think all four series, are going to be a bit of a dogfight. We've heard about how bad it is that the Stars and Knights matched up, and I agree with that. But I don't really think there's like a soft series. I don't think there's one of these teams that's like a walk to get through in 4 or 5 games and just have a big leg up on the field. So we'll see how it goes. I think the West looks really, really tight right now.
Yeah, the only bet I've got as far as a series bet in the Western Conference is the Winnipeg Jets at plus 115. I've got them winning the series 49.4% of the time. So a virtual coin flip, but I agree with you pretty much wholeheartedly. And I like those looks. And I do want to mention, though, that, in the 2022 playoffs, I was able to get Cale Makar at 13-1, I think, in game 3 of the first round. So you can find some value a little bit later in the first round and, later in the playoffs. But I definitely like starting the playoffs with some of the looks that you mentioned for sure.
Yeah, and I fully agree just on that like overall sentiment. That's the way I see it for like the series prices for a lot of this stuff is like there's time to make adjustments, but the playoffs are super unpredictable. Yeah. I personally am not big on like walking in a lot of positions or anything like that pre-series. I think you can learn a lot. You can give yourself out, you can try to kind of control things more, I think, rather than trying to split hairs at the start, I think. So I don't think you need to like overexpose yourself or try to act like you know more than you do. To me, it feels like a lot of the series are like, I don't want to say just a coin flip, but like, it's going to be really tight out there. And last year's first round was a complete gong show. So that definitely did hold some weight for the 2023 playoffs.
Yeah, and game ones can be a good indicator. So I definitely agree with you there. Thanks, Nick. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us today and give some of your thoughts on the Western Conference playoff picture. Good luck with your bets in the first round, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again next week.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and good luck this weekend.
All right, awesome, man. Thanks. All right, awesome stuff from Nick. A few more looks to take into the Western Conference and consider betting. My only bet, though, for the Western Conference first round matchups is the Winnipeg Jets at plus 115. So go Jets, go. Good luck with your bets in the first round of the playoffs. We'll be back on Monday with an update following the series openers on Saturday and Sunday. Some updated series prices, probabilities, and predictions. Maybe we'll find some value in the adjusted markets. Who knows? Tune in to the Puck Portfolio weekdays on the Canada Sports Betting YouTube channel to find out.